Hey blues fans, glad you're here. It's time for another episode of This Week in the Blues. I'm your host, Jimbo Big Train Madsen, with the blues band Big Train and the Locomotives. We're your favorite blues nerds. So let's take a look and see what happened this week in blues history. On June 16th, in 1980, The Blues Brothers premiered in Chicago, Illinois, where most of it was filmed. It was released nationally 4 days later. It features musical numbers by James Brown, Cab Calloway in his final feature film role, Aretha Franklin, Ray Charles, Chaka Khan, Big Walter Horton, Pinetop Perkins, and John Lee Hooker. Other cameos include Steven Spielberg, Paul Rubens, who you know as Pee Wee Herman, Eagles guitarist Joe Walsh, and singer-songwriter Stephen Bishop. In 2020, the film was selected for preservation in the United States National Film Registry by the Library of Congress as being culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant. All I've got to say is I just love seeing all the cameos of all these great blues artists. Tampa Red first recorded the blues standard Love with a Feeling on June 16th in 1938 in Chicago. A number of blues artists have interpreted and recorded the song, and when Freddie King adapted it in 1961, it became his first single to appear in the record charts. Tampa Red recorded Love with a Feeling as a mid-tempo 12-bar blues. Accompanying Red, who sang and played slide guitar on the number, were Black Bob Hudson on piano and an unknown bass player. There was a bass player there, we just don't know who it was. One of the most popular classic blues singers of her time, Sarah Martin, was born on June 18, 1884. She was billed as the famous Moanin' Mama. She began a successful recording career when she was signed by OK Records in 1922. She was among the most recorded of the classic blues singers and made numerous recordings, including a few under other names, like Margaret Johnson and Sally Roberts. Through the 1920s, she toured and recorded with such performers as Fats Waller, Clarence Williams, King Oliver, and Sylvester Weaver. St. Louis blues pioneer Herman Ace Wallace was born on June 18th in 1925. Wallace spent the 50s and 60s as a member of the influential local band Big George Brock and the House Rockers, and later, while in Detroit, where he played with John Lee Hooker and Earl Hooker. Although born in St. Louis, when he was 3, Wallace's parents relocated to Indiana, where his father worked in the steel mills. 8 years later, the family returned to St. Louis, at which time Herman and his brother Calvin began to learn the mandolin and harmonica. Wallace took the name Ace, formed from the initials of his sister Anita, brothers Calvin and Edward, and formed his own band, Ace Wallace and the Trumps. Here's a bit of blues history for you. When the Levee Breaks was recorded on June 18th in 1929 in New York City by Kansas Joe McCoy and Memphis Minnie. When they wrote and recorded When the Levee Breaks, the great Mississippi flood of 1927 was still fresh in people's memories. The flooding affected 26,000 square miles of the Mississippi Delta. Hundreds were killed, and hundreds of thousands of residents were forced to evacuate. The event is the subject of several blues songs, including Blackwater Blues by Bessie Smith, Mississippi Heavy Water Blues by Barbecue Bob, and Charlie Patton's High Water Everywhere, Parts 1 and 2. Blues duo Leroy Carr and Scrapper Blackwell recorded How Long Blues on June 19th, 1928. It is based on How Long Daddy, recorded in 1925 by Ida Cox with Papa Charlie Jackson. The song became an early blues standard, and its melody inspired many later songs. It was a massive hit in the pre-war blues era, a song that every blues singer and piano player had to know. In 1988, How Long Blues was inducted into the Blues Hall of Fame, and in 2012, the song received a Grammy Hall of Fame award. Swamp blues harmonica great Lazy Luster was born on June 20th, 1933. contrary to his colorful nickname, Lazy Lester swore he was never all that lazy. But he seldom was in much of a hurry either. Although the relentless pace of his recording schedule, including the Swamp Blues classics I'm a Lover, Not a Fighter, and I Hear You Knockin', might contradict that statement. While growing up outside of Baton Rouge, he was influenced by Jimmy Reed and Little Walter. His entry into playing professionally arrived quite by accident. While riding on a bus sometime in the mid-50s, he met guitarist Lightnin' Slim, who was searching fruitlessly for an AWOL harpist. The two styles meshed seamlessly, and Lester became Slim's harpist of choice. Chicago blues musician Johnny Yard Dog Jones was born June 21st, 1941, on a cotton plantation in Crawfordsville, Arkansas. Influenced by Robert Johnson and T-Bone Walker, Jones stated that when he was in his early teens, he was given harmonica lessons by Little Walter. At the age of 18, he moved to Chicago and played in clubs and on the blues circuit for several decades before recording his debut album at the age of 55. He won a W.C. Handy Award in 1998. On June 21st in 1948, the Columbia label announces its new technological breakthrough, a long-playing vinyl phonograph record that can hold up to 23 minutes of music on a side. At the time the LP was introduced, nearly all phonograph records for home use were made of an abrasive and therefore noisy shellac compound, employed a much larger groove, and played at approximately 78 revolutions per minute, or RPM, limiting the playing time of a 12-inch diameter record to less than 5 minutes per side. Well, blues fans, we just covered some of the highlights here. If you want to know more about these artists and other things that happened this week in the blues, and who wouldn't, be sure to follow our social media pages or visit our website at bigtrainblues.com. We'll have a new episode next week, so we'll see you then.